love me, love me.
You may remove your remains!
I'm the love witch. I seduce men with my spells, my potions, my eyes, and my body. The day he left me, the day I died.
Hey guys, welcome to Cinnamon Babe Horror Stories. So in today's video, we are going to talk about Christopher Case, a chance encounter at a bar in San Francisco. A polite refusal, then a chilling whisper. I'm actually a witch, and you'll be dead within a week. What began as a strange night turned into a week of mounting dread. This is the story of Christopher Case and the Curse of the Witch. Christopher Case was a 35-year-old music executive in Seattle, and he was known to be very active and athletic and very health conscious. He took health supplements, and he was very passionate, particularly about ancient Egyptian music. Although he had many friends and he was very close to his family, Chris was an introvert, and he enjoyed just being home alone and just relaxing, listening to his music. So keep in mind that the ancient Egyptians believed that music had magic and power attached to it. They believed that it could protect against evil spirits, it could communicate to the gods, and it was used in many different rituals like healing and things of that nature. And so just keep in mind, this is something that Chris was fixated on. And I wonder, did his interest in ancient Egyptian music open up a portal in his life? So at the time, Chris was a single man, and he just wasn't really interested in dating at the moment. He was happy, with his career and his fitness routine and just hanging out with friends. He was a simple guy. So one day, April 1991, Chris flew to San Francisco on a business trip, and he ended up going to a social gathering at a restaurant or somewhere where they were having dinner, and he ends up meeting this older woman. I don't know her age, but she was a lot older than him, and they settle into a conversation, and somehow the topic about music comes up, and she tells him that she is very passionate about ancient Egyptian music, which should have been a red flag, because first of all, that is a very peculiar genre of music to be passionate about. It's very unique. Most people aren't passionate about that type of thing. And so for someone that you don't know, who's never met you, to come and say, hey, I'm passionate about the very thing that you're passionate about that most people are not passionate about, that should have been a red flag for him. But instead, that draws Chris in, and he's very excited to hear that someone else is interested in that type of thing, because like I said, it's very rare. So they get into a great conversation and they're connecting. But keep in mind, Chris is not attracted to her, and he's not interested in dating her. He's just really excited to talk about, what he's passionate about with someone else. So as the conversation is going on, the woman is obviously romantically interested in Chris, and he can tell, obviously. And she invites him to come back to her place. Well, like I said, Chris is not interested, and he just politely, declines, oh, I'm sorry, I have an early flight tomorrow morning to fly back home. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to come back to your house, but I am really enjoying this conversation, blah, blah, blah. Well, instead of accepting that answer, she gets more and more aggressive, and she's like, no, like, come back, just come back to my place, blah, blah, blah. He continues to decline politely, but she gets more and more aggressive. So finally it gets to the point where he's like, no, thank you, have a lovely evening, and he turns to leave. Well, women, I know specifically, do not like rejection. Like, and it's hilarious. And it's funny because, like, he probably, like, was really, like, thrown off and turned off by her desperation, because she just was so desperate for him to come back to her place. And it's like, why are you so desperate? So before he could leave, she says,
hey, I'm actually a witch, and you're gonna be dead within the week.
What could Chris do? He just simply shrugs it off and walks away with a bad feeling. So Chris had laughed to a friend about this crazy encounter he had with this lady, and he just chalked it up as a bad date. So April 12th, Chris flew back home, and he expected for life to just go back as normal, workout routine, just regular life, just enjoying life. But when he got back to his apartment and it was nighttime, he began to see shadowy figures on the side of his eye. And when he would go to look, there would be nothing there. And then he would also start to hear whispering. And so Chris began to get very afraid. And this went on literally throughout the week. And it just started to get worse. He would start to see more and more shadowy figures. And the more he saw the shadowy figures, the more visual they would become. Like, their presence would get stronger, and then the whispering would increase as well. And Chris was not a spiritual or religious man, and he was pretty just like, practical, and this just wasn't making any sense to him. And he just started to think back on what that lady said, and he began to get very, very afraid. So Chris had contacted one of his friends, I believe her name was Sammy, and he was telling her what was going on in his house. She didn't live where he lived, so it's not like anybody could come and help him or keep him company. So she was like, why don't you just call the police? Of course, why would he call the police if you're seeing like ghosts and stuff? The police can't do nothing about that. So he declined to do that. But she could tell from his voice that he was really, really afraid, and she was not used to hearing that from him because he was usually a confident and calm person. So on April 16th, Chris could not take it anymore. He decided to go to this religious bookstore that was near his home to get some protection against these evil forces that had been attacking him. But like I said, he was not originally a spiritual man that knew anything about like religion and stuff. And so he's basically going into this store blindly without any advice or knowledge about the spiritual realm. So what he does is he goes into the store, he gets like occult books, he gets a bunch of crucifixion stuff, buys salt, and a bunch of candles. And from reading the occult books, he reads that the salt you're supposed to pour it around your house, and it's supposed to protect you against evil spirits. He puts up the crucifixions all over his walls throughout his apartment, and he's studying up on things of the occult and possession and demonic spirits. So in believing that these relics and items would protect him, and that this ritual that he was performing on his home, and by the way, no one knows what particular rituals he was doing, because like I said, he had bought several books, but he believed that once he did this was going to protect him against whatever it was that was bothering him. So one night he went to sleep. He managed somehow to go to sleep. I don't know how. But he managed to fall asleep. But he ended up suddenly waking up, and he was experiencing sleep paralysis. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically when you wake up out of your sleep, but it's like your body is still asleep, and it's like paralyzed and you can't move. So it's like you're awoke, but your body is like, nope, I'm still asleep, and you can't move. And it's almost like you're stuck in a dream in the physical realm. So he literally woke up and could not move. And no matter what he did, he could not break out of the sleep paralysis. And I've personally experienced that before in my life. I never like saw or heard anything, but like it's really like you be like in a panic state. And you just have to calm yourself. And what I do, I just start praying, and God usually releases me out of it. So that helps calm me down. But like if you are a person who is not spiritual, that had to be extremely terrifying for him, because he probably had never experienced nothing like that before. But he literally is laying there locked in his body in his dark room, and out of nowhere he sees a shadowy figure coming closer and closer to his bed while he's laying there completely trapped. So he starts hyperventilating and just trying with all his might to break out of it, and he can't. Next thing he knows, this shadowy figure gets on top of him and starts to strangle him, and there's nothing he can do about it. So at this point he thinks he's about to die, but suddenly the shadowy figure stops and leaves, and out of sheer exhaustion he just falls asleep. So the next morning when Chris wakes up, there's no sign of anybody there, but he looks at his fingertips, and on all of his fingertips there are incisions that have been cut into his fingers, like it was like precisely cut in each like fingertip. His bed has like droplets of blood all over from his fingertips being cut, with no sign of how that happened. So obviously he's panicked. He calls his friend Sammy. He tells her what happened. She's scared for him. I believe she calls the police and has the police sent over there. But, you know, there's not much they can do. So it didn't amount to anything. When Chris called his friend Sammy, he was basically telling her that they are going to kill me and there's nothing I can do. Like, he knew like his days were numbered, because at this point he fully believed that that curse that witch put on him was real and she was going to carry it out. And he just felt completely hopeless. Do you think he reached out to any pastor or anybody that works in spirituality? No, unfortunately, that's not this type of story. This is someone who is completely in the dark about that type of thing. It just doesn't know what to do. So that night, the next day after the paralysis situation had happened, Chris went and stayed at a hotel because he believed that he had barely escaped death. By April 17th, Chris had stopped calling his friend and answering her phone calls, and she began to get extremely worried because of everything he was telling her, and at this point he was not answering the phone. So she sent the police to his apartment, but they couldn't gain access in there, and so they just told her, you know, just wait it out and call us back if you don't hear from him. So on April 19th, 1991, Sammy had called the police and asked them to return and do a wellness check. They did. They returned and they were able to gain access into the apartment. And when they came inside, they saw salt everywhere, crucifixions on every wall, candles that were lit and burnt down. Yeah, a bunch of notes written all over the floors as if he was trying to like perform some type of ritual. And none of it made sense. The police started to call out for Chris, but he did not answer or come out to them. And so as they were moving through the apartment, like I said, it literally looked as if they were walking through like an Exorcist movie. When the police finally reached the bathroom, that is where they found Christopher Case inside of the bathtub, fully dressed in a kneeling position. I believe with his hands like that, leaned up against the wall, with no injuries or any sign of how he died. The coroner confirmed that Chris had suffered a sudden heart inflammation that led to cardiac arrest. This didn't make any sense to Chris's friends and family because he was obviously a healthy person who took his health very seriously. And for him, and then he was also young. So it just was very odd that out of nowhere he would die from cardiac arrest, although it is possible. And so to this day, it is a closed case, and it remains a mystery to Chris's friends and family and people around the world. Did Chris die from sheer fear, or did Chris actually die from a curse from a scorned witch whose abilities surpass human limitations? So my conclusion is that yes, people do have the power to put curses over your life or speak curses over you. People do have that power, especially if you are not covered by the protection of Jesus Christ. That is your only defense against someone speaking a curse over your life. And had that woman had done that to someone who knew that, or someone who literally worked within the power of God, they would have literally sent that curse back to her. Like, no, I'm protected in the name of Jesus, and that curse is sent back to you. and she would have cursed herself. But because Chris was like most people in the world, he just, was an independent man living his life, and, he wasn't spiritual. He wasn't protected or educated about the spiritual realm, and so he fell victim to it. And it's really sad, and it's really frustrating for me because I hate when evil prevails. Probably, which is why I'm like passionate about like horror stories, because like it just forces your brain to like think about those types of things. I hate when evil prevails, and because I know who God is, and I know that he's your only defense, and I just hate when people don't know that, because it just really breaks my heart, and it just frustrates me. But one thing I also know for sure is that the services of the devil are not free. It costs. It's going to cost you everything you got and more. So wherever that woman is, she's paying, or she's going to pay up dearly if she haven't already. Like, those services are not free. They're not going to work for you for free. It's almost like dealing with like a loan shark that will basically unalive you if you don't pay up, and they're going to charge extra interest. I also wanted to mention that, Chris, out of desperation, he believed that going to relics and rituals and crucifixions, he thought that those things were going to protect him. When you don't believe in the power behind something like the crucifixion, for example, it's not going to help you. So you can't just buy a cross and hold it up to a vampire and say, back, demon, back. Like, it's not going to work because you don't believe in it. Like, you don't know what the crucifixion represents, and you don't believe in the power of it. So, I mean, what is salt and sage and all this little stuff going to do against a powerful, ancient, malevolent deity that is very intelligent? What is that going to do to an intelligent being? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Crystals are not going to do anything. Like, it's not going to protect you because you're up against something that is highly intelligent and highly powerful, and it knows more than you. And like I said, you have no defense against it. You can't protect yourself against it with things of the physical realm. Only God can protect you. So yeah, stay away from that stuff. Do not mess with that stuff. And like I said, your only line of defense is Jesus Christ. That's the only way to deal with something like that. So, yep, I hope you enjoy. Please like and subscribe. And also tell me what you think happened in the comments down below, or what your view is on this type of thing. Stay tuned for the next episode, and have a wonderful day. Bye.